longtime listener to the Solo Shot, you know that almost always I'm going to pick a high-salaried pitcher over a high-salaried stack. And the reason for that is that pitchers are just easier to predict. There's less variance there, and I know that if I use a high-salaried pitcher, my odds of my lineup being good are going to be higher than if I use a high-salaried stack. Tonight, that's a little bit different because there aren't a ton of high-salaried pitchers I truly believe in, and there is a stack that I want to load up on with the Los Angeles Dodgers at Coors Field for tonight. So we're changing up our process just a bit, and we are going to be focusing on a couple of mid-range and a couple lower salaried pitchers too, to try to find ways to get access to the Dodgers. Welcome on into the Solo Shot. That's right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and numberFire.com. My name is Jim Sonis. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire.com, here to break down Friday's main slate. With lock set for 7-10, it is a 12-game slate, so fairly robust and plenty of options. And unfortunately for tonight, we got a lot of weather to worry about. I'm not talking about rain. I'm talking about temperatures because it is cold out east. I can tell you right now, I am quite chilly. I am wearing my house jeans. It ain't too hot out here in Syracuse. Now, elsewhere for tonight, we've got winds blowing in at 13 miles per hour for the Braves and the Mets in New York. It's not a great park for hitting to begin with, so I downgrade hitters there. I would do the same thing in Detroit for the Tigers against Cleveland. It's just 56 degrees there. Now, winds are blowing out at 13 miles per hour, but because the temperature is so low, I would still give that game a downgrade. Winds are blowing in at 11 miles per hour in Baltimore for the Rays and the Orioles. Not as bad as the super cold places, so I'd rank it above, like Fenway and stuff, but still worth considering. Speaking of Fenway, it's only 58 degrees in Boston for the Yankees and the Red Sox. I would downgrade hitters in that one. It's tough because the implied total there is monstrous, and the Yankees have been absolutely destroying things out there healthy, but I do feel like we probably should downgrade that one regardless. At Wrigley Field, winds are blowing in at 12 miles per hour, and the temperature is just 56 degrees. So double dipping on bad conditions for hitters. So downgrade hitters big time for the Cubs and the Twins, and that will influence our pitching selections as well. We'll get into the pitchers in just 1 second, but first, we got a brand new contest available to FanDuel Podcast Network listeners, and I think you're going to like it. It is a rake-free paid contest exclusively for all of you for the NFL. It is just a $5 entry fee, so it's for people of all bankroll sizes, so you can put a little bit extra, and you can also put in up to 3 lineups. There are just 400 total entries. First place gets $200. So if you want to go up against others in the FanDuel Podcast Network community, head on over and get yourself entered. You can find a link to the contest on the show notes for the Heat Check Fantasy Podcast, which went up yesterday. You can find that on numberFire.com in the NFL tab, or just go to FanDuel.com/league/listener league. That's FanDuel.com/league/listener league to get yourself entered. Again, just $5 to enter, 3 entries max, NFL contest week 2. There is no rake. If you fill it quickly, we'll get a bigger contest for next week. So FanDuel.com/league/listener league. Or go to the post on numberFire.com for the Week 2 Heat Check Fantasy Podcast. And as you can probably figure out by now, our Week 2 NFL preview has been posted, breaking down all the plays we are looking at for this week between myself and Brandon Gadula, looking at the mid-tier running backs, looking at the high-salary running backs, trying to rank all of them, and also prioritizing the games we want to stack and listing out our favorite plays at each position. Make sure you find that by searching for the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts. And if you like what you hear, leave us a rating and review. Also, later today, speaking of the NFL, we're going to have our Snake Draft show once again. That's on the FanDuel YouTube, and Twitch, and Facebook pages. It'll be myself, JJ Zachariason, and Brandon Gadula doing a 3-person Snake Draft live on air and then talking through our thoughts on the Week 2 main slate. So make sure you head on over to the FanDuel YouTube or Twitch or Facebook pages. Subscribe there so you get notified as we go live at 3:30, and we'll follow that up with our regular MLB DFS Q&A at 4 p.m. today. Pitching preview for this Friday main slate, Zach Plesac is $10,400. He is the highest salaried pitcher on FanDuel, mostly because he's facing the Tigers, but Tyler Glasnow checks in at 10-1. Zach Gallen facing Zach Greinke, and they are third and fourth in salary. Gallen, $9,700. Greinke is $95,000. Kyle Hendricks is $9,300, and then Max Fried is $9,000. We got Danny Duffy and Chris Paddock as the other guys at not $8,000 or higher. And again, I really want to stack the Dodgers for tonight, and that will influence a majority of this podcast for today. I might not be able to get there with Tyler Glasnow, who is $10,100. But I think I can, based on some of the value plays we have available to us. Glasnow is not going to be the main guy for me when it comes to stacking the Dodgers, but straight up, he is the top pitcher for tonight. So I did want to talk about him here in case some of you are not as enthused with Coors Field, or if you want to just use Glasnow, because I do think that, again, you can make it work with Coors and Glasnow. Just requires a little bit of some somersaults for sure. Glasnow is facing the Orioles, and as we now know, that's not a great matchup for a pitcher because they have a 106 WRC plus against righties with just a 22% strikeout rate. This Orioles team is pretty scrappy, and it's a negative for pitchers. So this is not a matchup-based play. It's all about the talent, but Glasnow has a lot of that. He had his pitch count in check early in the season. That was true for most of the Rays pitchers. They tried to ramp things up slowly, but that pitch count has gone up recently. We've seen Glasnow go more than 100 pitches in 2 straight starts. He's also up the usage on his curveball in that time. He has had 5 starts with that curveball usage increasing. He has a 2.87 skill interactive ERA with a 38% strikeout rate and a 7% walk rate. His second start in that 5-start sample was against this very same Orioles team, and he had 13 strikeouts in that game. He has had 9, 9, and 7 strikeouts in the 3 starts since. From a talent perspective, Glasnow is the top arm of the slate for tonight. And honestly, he does provide a pretty major edge because there aren't a lot of guys in the slate who can get strikeouts. So I think that he's worth targeting, even if it does cost you at times Coors Field. I would at least try to make it work. Maybe you go for the lower salary guys at Coors Field within the Dodgers. I'm not entirely sure it'll happen because it does force you to get creative elsewhere, but I do think it's at least worth trying. I would rather stack Coors Field if you're forced to choose between Glasnow and Coors Field. That was not the case last night. But for me, Glasnow is my favorite higher salary pitcher tonight. It just might not be the best time to splurge at this position at 10-1. So instead, let's talk about 2 pitchers who are a little bit lower salaried than Glasnow, who could potentially make it very easy to stack Coors Field. If I have just one entry for tonight, a single entry bullet, I'm going to use Chris Paddack as my pitcher. And there is a good amount of risk here. So there's a reason that Chris Paddack is $8,200. Paddack has a 4.74 ERA this year. He's had bad results. And he's also coming off a start in which he lasted just 2 innings. He left because of an ankle injury. It didn't require a stint on the injured list. They just pushed him back a couple of days. And his peripherals are really good recently. So I am okay taking a spin at Paddack if it allows me to stack Coors Field, which it very much does. The results for Paddack can be a bit misleading. He's had 3 blow-up starts in which he has allowed 4 or more earned runs, and that's not what you want, obviously. That does matter, and it's why he's risky for tonight. But in a small sample of 49 1/3 innings, that's going to have a disproportionately negative impact on your ERA. The peripheral numbers say that Paddack should get better. For the full season, he has a 3.72 skill interactive ERA. His strikeout rate is 25%. Now, the hard hit rate for Paddack is not good. If you're looking for a reason why the results have lagged, that's it. And that may not get better throughout the course of the year. But we've seen Paddack taking steps forward recently in getting more strikeouts, which give you more wiggle room to let up a couple of dingers. The pitch for Paddack that was getting pummeled the most was his curveball. Opponents had a 441 expected weighted on base average against it, according to Baseball Savant. So Paddack effectively dumped that pitch 5 starts ago. That does make him a 2-pitch pitcher, but that's effectively what he was last year, and the peripherals have been strong in this time. Paddack has a 3.29 skill interactive ERA with a 30% strikeout rate and a 5% walk rate. The hard contact issue is still there. But this is a good matchup for that specifically because the Mariners, they do make some hard contact, but they're not a big fly ball team. They're more of a liner, ground ball team. So if they do make hard contact, it's less likely to punish Paddack via a long ball. That helps Paddack quite a bit. The Mariners have a 23% strikeout rate against righties, so Paddack's floor is not good due to both the injury and the results. But I think he has a ceiling, and he lets you get ceiling elsewhere by helping you stack Coors Field. That is enough for me to take the risk on Paddack and see what happens. So Chris Paddack, to me, again, if I have one entry for tonight, Paddack will likely be the pitcher I use in that entry. Another guy I'm considering here is Kyle Hendricks. I'm not really a Kyle Hendricks guy. He doesn't get many strikeouts, and those matter a lot for me in DFS. But on tonight's slate specifically, Glasnow and Paddock are the only guys with relevant sample strikeout rates higher than 27%. So by using Hendricks, you're not missing out on as much goodness elsewhere as you usually would. When you add in the weather at Wrigley Field, I think I can get behind it here. The reasoning here is that we know Hendricks should put up a good real-world pitching performance for tonight. He has a 3.29 ERA for the full season. He's been posting good ERAs for his entire career. It comes with a 4.03 skill interactive ERA. And when you can get there with just a 20% strikeout rate, you know everything else is really good. Hendricks holds opponents to a 27% hard hit rate. He keeps them on the ground 47% of the time, and he also does not give up walks. That does mean more balls in play, which in 2020 can leave you open to a lot of risk, but it matters less when you're so good at suppressing hard contact. Hendricks is facing the Twins here. Their forte is hard contact, so it's possible they can get to Hendricks, but the weather makes that a lot harder. The Twins also have a 25% strikeout rate against righties as a team, so if Hendricks could get strikeouts, he'd be among the best pitchers in DFS. I am not expecting him to do that tonight, but I'm also not expecting huge scores out of many pitchers here. When that's the case, when I'm not expecting big scores elsewhere, the downside in using Hendricks are much more muted. I am more willing to use a guy like Hendricks, who I know will get me a good real-world performance. Zach Greinke fits in a very similar mold against the Diamondbacks. Revenge game for Zach Greinke there. They just don't strike out as much as the Twins, and his weather is not as good, which broke the tie for me in favor of Hendricks. So Greinke is in play too. I will go through two more pitchers I am at least considering and things to watch, guys who will be lower salaried, kind of similar to Paddock and let you go nuts, but you can definitely get there with Hendricks. And again, I would try to get there with Glasnow too, because I think from a talent perspective, it's Tyler Glasnow and then everyone else, and I want to try to get that into my lineup for tonight if I can. With that said, let's talk about why I want to stack Coors Field as we transition into the stacks for today. The Dodgers are facing Ryan Castellani, and Castellani is someone we've been stacking against the entire year. And originally, it didn't work out too well. He has a 4.46 ERA for the full season, and he got good results early on. But as the season has progressed, the results have regressed, and the peripherals are starting to get a bit worse too. We have a 14% strikeout rate and a 17% walk rate for Castellani over his past 4 starts. He's been cutting back on his changeup usage, so maybe he realizes that's been a mistake and he'll go back to that changeup for tonight. But even if he does, the full season numbers when that changeup has been more of a factor are still fully stack worthy. He has a 4.95 skill interactive ERA, 16% strikeout rate, and a 48% hard hit rate with very few ground balls. That is an ideal stacking profile no matter where the guy is pitching. But when you put it in Coors Field against this offense, we could have liftoff for tonight. So normally, again, I'm going to favor the higher salary pitcher over the high salaried stack every time. Not here. The Dodgers are an absolute gem of a stack for tonight. The Rockies are facing Mitchell White. He had okay numbers in AAA last year, and they're terrible against righties, so they're still good. Like, Coors Field has a big advantage tonight because of all the low temperatures elsewhere. It's still in the 80s in Denver, and it's Coors. Everywhere else is kind of bad from a park factor perspective. So I think both the Dodgers and Rockies are very good options, but the Dodgers are an elite stack. Try to get them with Glasnow, but if you can't do both, I would pick the Dodgers here. Outside of that, my mindset is trying to find value plays to make it easier to stack Coors Field. Like, sure, I can stack the lower salary Dodgers, guys like Justin Turner with Glasnow, but I can't get to Mookie Betts and Cody Bellinger. I can make that easier on myself if I go with a value stack for my second stack. And to me, I think the Reds fit that pretty well. They're facing Jonathan Stever. Stever's only 23 years old, and he just made his debut last week, and he's a pretty fun prospect because last year in high A, he had a 28% strikeout rate with a 2.89 xFIP. He had really good results too. But that was in high A in his age 22 season. He was 1.2 years younger than the average player there, but it's not as if he was some super young guy or anything. So you should kind of expect a guy like Stever with a decent prospect pedigree to mop up in that situation. Now, though, he goes to the majors. In his debut last week, he had a 9.6% swinging strike rate, which is not overwhelming. He went 3 2/3 innings, had 3 strikeouts compared to 2 walks. So it's hard to tell what Stever will look like in the majors, but the Reds now have film on him. He's making a big leap. Didn't look overpowering in his first start, and I think that's something we can stack against. And it's especially true because the Reds do give us a good amount of value for tonight. We've been seeing Shogo Akiyama in the leadoff spots. He's $2,300. I would try not to go there, but if it gives you extra access to the Dodgers, I can get there. He doesn't have power, but he can swipe bases. So again, I am willing to use Shogo Akiyama. I would just kind of prefer not to if I can avoid it. Outside of him, we got Mike Moustakas at 28, Jesse Winker's 28, Nick Senzel's 27. He's back out there, hit 6th against a righty on Wednesday. So they're a good team to target when you want help getting access to the Dodgers. Again, I would try to do so without Akiyama, but if you need him in order to fit the Dodgers with Glasnow or to fit Mookie Betts or Cody Bellinger, then it's okay. He just is not the top priority for me from a value perspective for tonight. The other value stack I think is pretty solid is the Angels. They're facing Wes Benjamin. Benjamin's coming in after an opener, so he's not going to be listed as a starter for the Rangers, but he is going to be the bulk reliever. And Benjamin is a lefty who is going to be stretched out as a starter. He's worked in the bullpen this year. He hasn't been too bad there. He has a 4.38 ERA with a 26% strikeout rate. I'm just not sure he profiles as someone who will do too well when he's stretched out. He was a starter last year in AAA. He had a 5.52 ERA with a 6.08 xFIP. His strikeout rate is 19% or was 19%. And strikeout rate there is probably the more important number than the other numbers because it's not influenced by the weird juiced ball they had in AAA last year. So, but strikeout rate is going to be more believable, and his strikeout rate was not too high. He's been in the bullpen this year, and he's been getting strikeouts there, but I'm not sure it will translate as the sample expands. And that's key because he's a big fly ball pitcher. His ground ball rate, 31% this year. It was 35% in the minors last year. So he's going to let up fly balls. If he doesn't get strikeouts, that could get him in pretty big trouble. So I'm willing to buy into Los Angeles, hoping that winds up being the case. And I think they're a good option to turn to here. The same value plays we discussed a couple of days ago are in play once again with the Angels. I don't think this is a team you can use to get to the Dodgers with Glasnow, but you can stack them with Paddock and the Dodgers. I still like Jared Walsh, despite being a lefty. He'll probably get to face a righty in his first plate appearance, which is good, but he's been crushing everyone. Doesn't matter if they're righty or lefty. And his numbers against lefties last year in the minors are really good. The salary on Walsh is up to $3,100, but I'm going to continue to keep buying shares of Jared Walsh. The talent is there. The results are there. Salary is not up yet, so I'll keep on going there. Justin Upton, Albert Pujols, David Fletcher, the other, kind of high 2,000 type guys. Max Stassi is $2,400. I am okay with him, assuming he catches and bats 7th once again. So you can use Stassi, I think, as like a super salary saver. I'd rank him above Pujols personally, but I think the Angels, I should say, are another value stack. So again, I think we should be able to make it work for tonight with at least Paddock and the Dodgers, but potentially Hendricks and Glasnow as well. Moving into things to watch, outside of Glasnow, Paddock, and Hendricks, there are 2 other guys I considered at pitcher for tonight. One is Jordan Montgomery and the other is Logan Webb. The problem is pitch count for both and kind of matchup as well. Montgomery was dealing last time out. He had 9 strikeouts in 5 2/3 innings, but he's still left after just 72 pitches. So that's kind of annoying. Webb has been leaning more on his curveball and less on his changeup in his past 5 starts, and it's led to really good peripherals. Montgomery is facing the Red Sox. Webb is facing the A's. If they were in better matchups, or if I felt better about their pitch counts, I would have put them above Hendricks. But they're still at least worth looking into for tonight. If you want to go totally with a Coors Field stack, I think you can do so at Paddock, but you could also do so by going down to potentially Montgomery or Webb. For the other hitters tonight, I would consider Tampa Bay and Cleveland. The Rays are facing old friend Alex Cobb. Cobb is still getting ground balls, kind of his MO, but he's letting up a bunch of balls in play, and his hard hit rate is up to 41%. That's led to a 5.03 ERA. The Rays are another team that can help us save some salary here. Austin Meadows specifically, his salary is down to $2,900. Still making good hard contact, still putting the ball in the air. He should benefit from facing a low strikeout pitcher, so I like him. Nate Lowe is $2,900. Yoshi Tsutsugo is $2,700. He puts the ball in the air too. So the Rays another value team to consider. I just put them lower than teams like the Angels and like the Reds because Cobb gets the number of ground balls that he gets. Cleveland is in bad weather, which is why they're lower for me, but they're facing Michael Fulmer, who has been slowly getting a little bit better this year, but he's still just not right. He's allowed 9 earned runs in his past 2 starts, so Cleveland is another team that can get the job done. There's a bit of value to be squeezed there if you need help getting the Dodgers, so I think that between Cleveland, Tampa Bay, the Reds, and the Angels, you should have enough value to make the Dodgers work. Just a question of if you can make them work with Glasnow or if we have to settle for Paddock. I am very okay settling for Paddock because he gives me the really good Dodgers, but I'm also going to try to make it work with Glasnow too. So we'll see what the lineups look like, and we'll talk about those lineups later today on the FanDuel Fantasy Q&A. Again, that starts at 3:30 with our NFL Snake Draft for Week 2 with myself, JJ Zachariason, and Brandon Gadula. We'll come back at 4 p.m. on the same stream, as you can just keep that stream up. We'll talk some MLB from 4 to 4:25 to get you set for tonight's slate. Search for that value with lineups being out and get you set for Friday night. Also, make sure you check out the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. Not only do we have our Week 2 NFL podcast, also Austin Swain broke down Saturday's UFC card. It's a 14-fight card. Actually, I think it's now 13. But regardless, you can check that out. Check out Austin's thoughts on the fights, his favorite plays on FanDuel for UFC DFS. Make sure you are subscribed to the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. Wherever you get your podcasts, you can get notifications once we push those out each and every day. Also, do not forget the Week 2 NFL FanDuel Podcast Network Listener League, FanDuel.com/league/Listener League, FanDuel.com/league/Listener League, or just go to numberFire.com and check out the podcast notes for the Week 2 Heat Check Preview podcast. If you have questions for me before 4 p.m., I am on Twitter at Jim Sannes, JIMSANNES. You can also follow the FanDuel Podcast Network at FanDuel Podcast. Big thank you to Calvin Theobald, our video producer from the video side of things here today. Thank you, Cal, as always. And thank you to everyone for tuning in. Good luck with your MLB DFS lineups for tonight. We'll talk to you once again tomorrow. This has been the Solo Shot right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network.